Casanova was not only the world's most famous womanizer, he was also a notorious Kabbalist and Freemason who kept close company with his fellow Kabbalists and Freemasons. Casanova was privy to the deepest and darkest secrets of these occult fellowships. In 1788, Casanova published an account of an inner earth which was reached through a portal in the Arctic at the bottom of the ocean. The inner subterranean world was populated by long-lived tiny hermaphrodites. He claimed that the real Garden of Eden is this supposed inner earth and is lit by a central sun. According to Casanova, the corrupt human beings on the surface of the earth are the descendants of the exiled family of Adam and Eve. Christopher John Bjerknes presents his English translation of the letter Casanova wrote to the Count of Waldstein in place of a dedication in his 1788 work Icosameron, the story of Edward and Elizabeth, which exposed these Kabbalistic and Freemasonic beliefs which became the subject of numerous novels and which reveal the hidden motives of the Freemasonic explorers who dominated the exploration of the Arctic and North and South Poles. Bjerknes believes that the Freemasonic presidents Andrew Johnson and Harry Truman and Kabbalist President Donald Trump were and are motivated to seize the Arctic in order to capture the entrance to the Garden of Eden and create a subterranean world for the benefit of the remnant of Jewry who are slated to survive the apocalypse, which is intended to utterly exterminate the rest of humanity. Together with the book by expert Kabbalist Margaret Cavendish entitled The Description of a New World, called The Blazing World, published in 1666, as well as the later works Simsonia, A Voyage of Discovery, published under the pseudonym Captain Adam Seaborn in 1820, and The Smoky God by Willis George Emerson in 1908. Bjerknes has discovered and proven that the Kabbalists and Freemasons plan to construct a subterranean Garden of Eden and Noah's Ark beneath the surface of the earth, while concurrently turning the surface of the earth into hell, thereby inverting the traditional belief that the earth's surface is paradise and its inner realms are hell. The Kabbalists and Freemasons seek to punish and exterminate Gentiles in the times of the tribulation they are staging today and subject them to the satanic forces of demonic artificially intelligent robots, drones, computers, cell phones, and surveillance cameras which will serve Satan's roles as tempter, witness, accuser, prosecutor, and punisher of sin on the hellish surface of the globe. As the ripened fruit of the tree of knowledge furnishes the Kabbalists with a subterranean paradise and inner sun in a new world to come, below the surface, in which they will bear 600,000 immortal hermaphrodites to replace humanity and serve as vessels for all the androgynous souls that were supposedly contained within Adam before he was separated into the incestuous brother and sister, Adam and Eve. The Kabbalists are geoengineering this outer hell on the surface by attempting to reflect and blot out the sunlight of the god Ra in service to their satanic god Seth Typhon, and by using artificial intelligence to persecute and destroy humanity. Here is the shocking proof found in Casanova's alarming letter.
To the Count of Waldstein, Lord of Ducks and other estates, Chamberlain of the royal family. Dear Count, no one in the world, not even the person who might have invented this story, can decide whether it is a true story or a novel, for it is not impossible that an honest pen might write down a true story, thinking that it is inventing it, if it can report something untrue, although it believes that it is only telling the truth. From this assumption, the following conclusion can be drawn. Without sufficient evidence, one can neither deny nor believe anything. The reader must unconcernedly take everything that seems probable to him as the truth, and call everything that is offensive to his reason false. So, Count, if you find that the contents of this book are impossible, believe it quite calmly. It will not harm you, especially since everything good in it has nothing to do with world history. There is, for example, an English book called Robinson Crusoe. It is considered a novel only because there is no evidence of historical truth, but as a novel it is valued all the more highly. 35 years ago, the French historian Monsieur Duclos told me that the story of the Venetian conspiracy written by the Abbé de S. Real could only be considered a fable and that he had got it from there. I replied that this maxim might be correct, but that nevertheless this conspiracy was a historical fact, and what is more, the account was very accurate. If the Ico-Samaran, which I am presenting to you, Count, is a true story, you will understand from it that the world in the interior of the earth is the earthly paradise of that Garden of Eden, whose existence we cannot doubt, although we do not know where it is. Some scholars have already asserted that it may be in the interior of the earth, but no one has gone to look for it. Jews and Christians alike naturally shied away from trying to discover it because they knew and know that God placed cherubim with fiery swords to prevent anyone from entering. Genesis chapter 3, verse 24. Curiosity might well have led them to seek paradise in the center of the globe, but perhaps they were afraid of finding hell instead of paradise. Many people claim that this is where their place is. Tertullian does not doubt it. St. Augustine is of the same opinion and says that the fire in the center of the earth is caused by a miracle of God. This invalidates Swindon's assertion that it is impossible for the earth to contain enough saltpeter to keep this fire going forever. He argues with profound knowledge that hell can only be in the great hollow of the sun, although King David said the opposite. Be that as it may, we can argue about it on the basis of this story and can say openly, without violating our religion, what pure reason and clear sense suggest to us. The keen-sighted will not laugh at us, I guarantee you that, and the grumbling of those whom Petrarch calls gente qui si fa notte avanti sera will not be able to interrupt our debate. We will not claim with foolish pride that we will arrive at certainty, but we will arrive at doubts. And you know very well that the most learned people are those who doubt a lot. He who doubts does not know, but he is never wrong. A thinking, being surrounded by matter, can never claim to know anything for sure, but we can make use of our reason. Happy is he who can use reason as an entertainment. If God created our earth to be inhabited, is it probable that he intended that only its outer surface should be inhabited, and not the inner cavity as well? Where the hive was not made for the bees to inhabit its outer wall, the muscle contains the mollusk within, and the soul, the mind, the seat of passions and virtues, were placed by the Creator not on man, but in man, the only exception being the Sarmatians, whose virtue, according to Tacitus, was veluti extra ipsos. The famous core of the earth, about which so many philosophers have made tentative conjectures, is a necessity and can only be its habitable part, created by God for us to inhabit it forever. It is the Garden of Eden from which we were driven out by disobedience to the Almighty. When it is said that he drove us out, we were in it, and the outside of the interior can only be its walls, the crust, the outer circumference. When we made ourselves unworthy to live there, when we were suspected of having tasted of the tree of life in order to become immortal, Genesis chapter 3, verse 22, our rebellious race was condemned by God to settle outside the walls of the beautiful garden, and here we are now. I am particularly surprised that we have always called ourselves inhabitants of this world, while in reality this expression does not apply to us at all. It cannot be appropriate for exiles. We are legitimate and proper settlers only on the surface of the globe on which we crawl around, since it is of course hollow, if you will allow me to use the expression. It is true that we have distinguished ourselves in many ways. We have known how to make use of everything. We have accomplished quite fine things on this thankless earth, which seems more suited to being flooded and inhabited by fish than to housing people. We have distinguished ourselves by wonderful works. We have tilled barren lands, defined the boundaries of some rivers, built dams against the seas, drained swamps, bored through and removed mountains, built roads and cities, generally raised the art of architecture to great honor and dignity, dug deep into the earth to extract metals from it. We have, so to speak, ripped open its belly. We have invented chemistry, the arts, and even the sciences. We have made laws, abhorred crime, and allowed virtue to triumph. Yes, we have managed to convince ourselves of the divinity of the human spirit, and thereby reached the shortest and most direct path to contemplating the omnipotence and incomprehensible greatness of the Creator. God must, so to speak, have been pleased when he saw what useful use we had made of the awkward gift he had given us as punishment. When we look at our earth and find it beautiful, must we not immediately consider that it is only because of what we have made of it? Yes, we. But this thought should not make us proud, but rather encourage us to thank the one who gave us the opportunity to distinguish ourselves in all this misery. And in putting up with all this, we have become accustomed to all the miseries of our life in this abode, which is only a place of exile, so accustomed that most of us no longer consider anything that interferes with our happiness as a nuisance. We endure the diseases to which we are subject, endure pestilence, wars, famine, floods, earthquakes. We endure the stench of mists, the lightning of the sky, the raging of the winds, the pestilential influence of the dog star. We endure excessive heat, the severe frosts, the wild beasts that are always ready to devour us, the insects that fill the air and which, if it is true that they arise from us like fleas, lice, bedbugs, are not wrong in biting us to take the nourishment we owe them. It must be admitted that we are very good-natured and easy-going people, since almost all of us are reluctant to die, and many would willingly undertake to be born again under the same conditions. All these wretched things, Count, are absent among the Megamicers. Now you will ask me, if this land is the earthly paradise, how could Edward and his sister get there, despite the guarding cherubim, angels, who, according to their name, are said to resemble oxen, and the divine ban? I can answer you as a philosophical theologian. First, God cannot pronounce an irrevocable sentence, and second, the Creator may, for his greatest glory, have permitted one of our mortal human couples to go there and return to tell us about it, and thereby strengthen our faith, which is only too weak and fickle. Consider also that the divine work of redemption must have destroyed every evil influence of the first sin, and that the absolving of a sin must be accompanied by the removal of the punishment intended for it. Edward left 5 million children there, whom he never saw sick or grow old during 80 years. Perhaps God wanted to restore immortality to them. What do we know? Let us now return to the Megamicra that Edward found as masters of that world. What is this new race of mankind, of which we have never heard, whose existence no one suspected, which cannot have descended from Adam, which cannot have had anything in common with original sin, and thus has nothing to do with the incarnation of God? May we suppose that it could be the race descended from the first human couple, of which the 26th verse of the first chapter of the infallible Genesis speaks? The Holy Spirit does not tell us their names, but only lets us know in the following verse 27 that this man formed 2 beings, each of whom was male and female, marem et feminam fecit Deus. In verse 28 he tells them, fill the earth, implete. Do you think that the word fill could be synonymous with covering? Would you say of an egg painted green that it was filled with green paint? They would say covered with green. God did not create the Megamicra and us to cover the earth, but to fill it. The firstborn stayed there and we were cast out. God created our eldest father Adam after the first week had already passed. But before I develop my thoughts further, I implore you, Count, to please note that despite my confident language, I only want to present to you conjectures. I assure you at the same time that even if my words touch on the truth, the strictest criticism will never find in them the slightest thing that could in any way offend the faith of our religion, which depends on the mysteries. God gave Adam the command not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Then he put him to sleep and, by a magic incomprehensible to us, created Eve, to whom, we must assume, Adam communicated God's prohibition. This creation, which we find in the 7th verse of the 2nd chapter, has nothing to do with the first, which is reported to us in passing in the 26th verse of the 1st chapter, and which is never mentioned again in the whole of Holy Scripture. The story of original sin forms the content of the whole of the 3rd chapter. But it should not be surprising that the Bible never mentions the first human pair, for it is the book of our religion, the perfection of which does not depend in the least on our knowing anything about the first human race, for we have nothing in common with them. Moreover, it does not seem to me either fitting or probable that it could have been God's intention to leave the interior of this world empty, and we may therefore without any hesitation consider it inhabited. But be prepared to meet with various common errors in the world of the Megamicrits, for they are also men, but you will find in them sublime things in everything that concerns their doctrines, God, the spiritual, creation, the immortality of the soul, which their nature contradicts, the transmigration of souls, which so many philosophers have struggled to understand. You will find in them our beliefs about eternity, rewards and punishments very reasonably graduated. The just are always happy throughout their lives and afterwards, the unjust always unhappy. You will hear of the wonderful sweet death of the Megamicrits, which is preceded by 18 months of uninterrupted joy. The duration of their life is the same for all, and therefore known to everyone. You will find their domination and dependence, and laws are limited, since there are only those that are necessary for man's happiness. All of them are without explanation, unlike ours, which only become more incomprehensible. You will admire their nearly 300 rulers, all happy, thanks to an education which teaches them that they can only be happy if they are loved by their subjects. And you will say with Terence, et erat longe, qui imperium credat esse gravius, aut stabilius biquodsit, quam illud quod amicitia adjungitur. You will find there a human race which, in order to be perfect and enviable, does not need to be divided into two sexes, which does not need to sleep to regain its strength, which feeds on its own milk, and which, in order to eat, does not need to wait for nature to provide it with teeth, those unstable, often unequal bones which on the surface of our earth leave 2/3 of the living before they have reached miserable old age. You will find there an eternal day, an uninterrupted spring. Love cannot properly be called passion among the Megamicra, for it is a feeling that is not subject to change, diminished or altered, and it may be said to be the real substance of their life, for their whole life is but one love, which continues like fire for 45 years, after 3 years have passed to kindle it. The two beings who form an inseparable pair come into the world to love and die in love, for they give each other the most lively proofs of love until the last moment of their lives. Their gentle extinction cannot be called death, but only a slight transition, for the same love will live immortally in eternity. According to the wording of the Holy Scriptures, we are supposed to form one body together, but the Megamicra are one in 2 bodies. There you will see with wonder trees covered with innumerable serpents, which our hero, destroyed with the help of his many children in defiance of superstition, although nothing had proved to him that these serpents were of the race of those who seduced Eve, for they did not speak. If you pay attention, Count, to the language of the Megamicers, you will notice how far it surpasses all that you know, for it is a true music in prose, whose soft harmony is not disturbed by any consonants. It is a continuous sound with spaces between each note, but with such a delicate tuning that only a very sensitive ear can perceive it. The higher music of counterpoint is its poetry, which needs no words like ours. The Megamicers do not need to receive it through their ears. It finds its direct path to the soul through a sixth sense that we do not have, and which God placed in their outer skin. This music can only be produced by real poets, who are as rare there as they are here. For the Megamicers it forms entire stories which cannot be reproduced in words. Our hero Edward, his sister and wife Elizabeth, and their descendants, when they listened, felt only the emotions it expressed: joy, pain, wonder, indignation, pity and emotion, without being able to understand what they were talking about. They say that the language of the Greeks inspired courage or kindled love and calmed anger, and I believe this, for ours amuses, moves, and makes one weep, as well as putting one to sleep when it is bad, which it often is, because our gentlemen musicians are not poets, and because our poets are miserable rhymers who do not even know the meaning of the beautiful name they give themselves. Dancing is highly developed among the Megamicers. They greet each other with dance steps and thereby express their thoughts, and this is a simple means of protecting themselves from flattery, lies, and that accursed pretense which we think praiseworthy and even count among the virtues, but which on closer observation turns out to be sheer deceit. Cicero tells us, quo quis versatior et calidior est, hoc invisior et suspectior detracta opinione probitatis. The Megamicers cultivate the fine arts very carefully, and these happy mortals especially pursue the study of physics, geometry, mechanics, and jurisprudence. They are all geographers and musicians. Moreover, a thorough study provides those who desire it with the necessary knowledge of commerce, which is the happiness of all social peoples and is the source of industry, which can only be promoted by the prosperity of commerce. As it is impossible, Count, for a human race to live without amusement, the pleasure of the Megamicers consists in hunting without killing the game, in fishing without depriving the fish of their freedom. They give themselves up to swimming with a talent unknown to us, since nature has endowed them with special internal organs which enable them to breathe in water like fish. The rich have bowers in the rivers, which in my English original are called otter burrows, where they entertain one another by very eloquent gestures and with extraordinary fluency. Horse racing is one of their favourite pastimes, and the noblest sport of the wealthy is to tame and train horses in their spare time. They have 100 different kinds of horses, including flying ones, but you will hardly like any of them any more than the others, for they have only the intelligence that nature has given them. These innocent conversations of the Megamicers will certainly delight you and make you say, O misery quorum gaudia crimen habent. You will find that the most learned scientists are chemists, all chemists are apothecaries, and all apothecaries are good cooks. You will hear of a motionless sun to which all nature there owes its life, and of a system that is always the same, productive and beneficial, and that brings as the least of its benefits the red rain, which in its colour resembles the waters of its rivers, and which 4 times in the megamicron year, after a precedent of wind, refreshes the atmosphere, not coming down from the sky as with us, but gushing out of the earth like the jets of a fountain. They would not breathe polluted air or winds too strong, and they would not walk on land subject to floods that destroy the gifts of Ceres and Flora and destroy the beautiful order that gives us smiling, fertile fields, delicately coloured trees, flowers and grasses in our gardens. There are arguments in that world too, Count, for people there also differ in their opinions and always want to be right, but there are no wars there, or at least only accidental ones, that are clearly unnatural. It is not like ours, where preparations for war are one of the first duties of a ruler, where people know how to start a war in a friendly way that is quite unknown to the Megamicers, while they are already determined to murder. Edward did indeed introduce war among the Megamicers, but he had to do so, otherwise he would have fallen victim to violence, and an Englishman would rather die than surrender. You will see in this very way what real, undisputed nobility is, which is far removed from all dispute and which springs from nature. You will see how the punishment of lies is the triumph of truth, the punishment of nakedness, the triumph of modesty. In this way, science triumphs over the indiscreet curiosity which is kindled by impudent questions. The beauty of that world will prove to you that this beautiful Europe which you have visited is only a motley mishmash, an unfinished garment patched together from various materials, however splendid they may be, but which do not fit together. These happy Megamicers which I have described to you have impressed you sufficiently, are quite small in stature. They are no bigger than one of your legs, which is why they are called Megamicers or great smalls. But they will grow in size before your eyes. You will become so accustomed to their smallness that you will finally come to think that they are actually greater than we are, and their kings more majestic than ours, although the latter are pleased to be 4 cubits high. If this is true, for I do not know for sure, and do not wish to offend anyone. The real majesty of a ruler rests on his virtues, his magnanimity and justice, combined with clemency, qui pige ad poenas princeps, ad praemia velox, quique dolet, quoties cogitur esse ferox. The small size of the Megamicra might make you think about the size of Adam and Eve, who, according to some ancient rabbis, were giants. At least, they were compared to the first human couple created. You will also be able to draw your own conclusions from the Holy Scriptures about a musical language that speaks to the soul. We read, Genesis chapter 2, verse 19, that Adam gave all animals their names, i.e., only those that correctly designated them. Those names and that original language have passed away. Even Noah was unaware of them, otherwise he would have communicated them to people after the flood. This beautiful language could only be a musical language, since we cannot understand that words, as we are accustomed to uttering them, could have the power to give us an idea of the form of something unknown to us. But I think that a song can have this power, and indeed, through the mediation of the sixth sense, which Adam perhaps possessed, but which, according to God's will, he did not pass on to his descendants. The Megamicers, Count, have vices which arise from the abuse of passion, but you will see that this is not a defect, but only dust. All the passions of the Megamicers exist only to make them happy. They are like our poisonous plants from which medicines are made. Everything depends only on good education, and man knows how to make the most of everything, nisi parent imperant. Some rich Megamicers allow themselves to be dominated by ambition, but they are not condemned to be bored in their old age, as we see in Venice, Rome, Naples, and Vienna. Illicit love also makes some of them unhappy, but they strive to free themselves from it because they are laughed at for it. There is only one sex among the Megamicers. Since all are male and female at the same time, they are neither male nor female, and we understand that reproduction depends not more on one of the two individuals than on the other. They are all the same, and so their instincts are the same, but you must not call them hermaphrodites, for that would be a very dirty term and would be an injustice to them, for in reality they are not, and although you will not see it, you can easily imagine it. For although Edward is very modest in his style and knows how to spare the reader's modesty in every way, he does not prevent a wise man from understanding what he needs to know. The physique of a Megamicer presents a sight that we call beautiful, and which is capable of arousing the most tender love. The reproduction of their race is a pleasant consequence of this beauty, although it has nothing to do with what constitutes their charm. You will also find poverty there, but it is not dirty, and you will accept it calmly because you will see that it must be found wherever there is wealth, and you will not condemn wealth when you see that it is the reward for real virtue and real merit. The Megamicers have a soul and a reason like us men, and they are covered with flesh like us, but their nature makes them superior to us, and their customs are in keeping with their upbringing. I would also like to warn you that the excessively numerous family of our hero should not frighten you. You will find nothing outrageous or absurd in it if you read quietly and keep your mind free from all prejudice, for prejudice deceives reason. And now I must tell you, Count, about the qualities of the gift that I am giving you and at the same time to the public. It is the translation of an English manuscript, but do not ask me to show you the original, for I am not very strong in English and fear severe criticism. I present this work to you, not by dedicating it to you, but by handing it over to you as an object of value to which you have a right. For in writing this work I have used time which, according to the honourable title you have bestowed upon me, could have been used in other ways. The firm conviction that reading this work would offer you a pleasant diversion gave me the incentive to finish it within 16 months. When I decided to make you a gift of this kind, I saw clearly that I could not avoid subjecting it to general criticism, so I leave it to the mercy or disgrace, the caprice or prejudice, the refined or baroque taste of the universe, for whether what I offer you is worth the effort I cannot know, without hearing what will be said about it, pro captu lectoris habent sua fata libelli. One curio will say with old Terence, ne iste magno conatu, magnus nugas dixirit. Another will say that I have only given this work out for a translation in order to secure myself a loophole, an escape from the criticism of the Aristarchs which I would like to deserve. But let them, if only not you, Count, tell me what Cardinal Hippolyte of Este said to Ariosto, and I will declare myself satisfied with everything. You are the only person in the world who, at the beginning of September 1785, thought of putting a stop to my wanderings by entrusting me with your beautiful library. All my life I had considered it a joke, never to decide where my bones would turn to dust, for this thought always disgusted me. But thanks to you, I now look forward to my pleasant dissolution in Chantilly, Bohemia, in your castle at Deux. I did not want to offer you my book with a bland dedication which you would have despised, for what is a dedication? I dislike dedications even more than funeral orations, for the latter at least have the advantage of not boring their heroes any more. Would I have honoured you more by making a formal dedication? Would I have made my book more famous? Or sold more? Neither the one nor the other. People prefer satires to panegyrics, and they are quite right. The best books are those which are least read and most difficult to sell, but that does not mean that I am trying to pass judgment on the merits of mine. In a dedication made according to the usual custom, I should have enumerated all your illustrious ancestors. I should have spoken in particular, without departing from the truth, of the famous Duke of Friedland. It would not have been difficult for me to defend his conduct with the aid of very important documents, and to demonstrate the heroism of his virtues at his tragic end. But what would I have achieved by doing so? I should have reported nothing new if I had written that his blood flows in your veins, and that his portrait is the only one which is dear to your eyes, the only painting which all those who are close to you can see in your bedroom. I might have displeased you by reminding you of the sad consequences of his courage, for without the heroic greatness of his soul you would have had 500,000 more pensions, which the right of the strongest has snatched from your family, which is glorious enough even without that great man. Had I spoken of you in my dedication? Of course. How could it be otherwise? I should have said that you possessed all virtues, and you would have laughed in my face for it. For although you have the germ of all good in your soul and in your blood, you yourself know better than anyone that you have no interest in being considered before the world a model of chastity, modesty, humility, and patience. You are not called to give your goods to the poor, nor are you inclined to die as a martyr for religion, or to die a heroic death for your country. But if I had praised your real virtues, you would have spurned my incense, for all I could have said was that your feelings always correspond to the honor which you venerate above all else, and which you are imbued with, that your house belongs more to your friends than to yourself, that happiness reigns wherever you are, that your spirit knows how to rise to the highest works of literature, that the most difficult authors occupy many of your leisure hours, and that your pleasures are those which have been praised by the greatest minds of antiquity. I should have mentioned your noble love of horses, and I should have thought of your knowledge of the nature of this honest friend of man, this protector of the most famous heroes of war. It was my pleasure to speak of Castor and his brother Pollux, deified and united by friendship more than by blood. Castor gaude equis, ovo prognatus eodem pugnis. I could have said that antiquity knew no greater virtue of Castor than that which exalted him as an unattainable horse-tamer, and which therefore numbered him among the gods with Pollux, who had the good fortune to be the first of all athletes, palmaque mobilis terrarum dominos ehavit ad deos. Such count was virtue 3,000 years ago. It consisted of courage, strength, and martial prowess. What elevates men today depends on quite different things, and you certainly do not envy the Dioscuri their lot. You love the children of Apollo for the sake of literature, just as you avoid the seductive harmony of hymns, but you deserve panegyrists because you love your friends, as Augustus and Maecenas loved Horace. I respect and honor you, Count, as I must, and I beg you not to think that I thought I could increase your prestige by this letter. I only wanted to express the feelings you have aroused in me. A name as famous throughout Europe as yours would be quite sufficient to honor my book in the present. What can secure a place for it in the future does not depend on you. If he fails to do so, I will do justice to myself without begging for cowardly excuses. Be happy, and to be so perfectly, follow the most rigorous and serious of all schools, the teachings of Epicurus, who was the wisest and most virtuous of all the ancient masters. He will teach you that you can only be happy by obtaining pleasures, avoiding those which are only apparent, or those which produce annoying consequences. Nocet empta dolore voluptas. Real pleasures must never be harmful, but you will not shrink from small drudgeries when you see that they can become the sources of real happiness, for we enjoy the present by always keeping the future before us, even when we go backwards. This was the moral of the great philosopher, who would have reached the non plus ultra of wisdom if he had understood that the pleasures of the gods could be independent of matter. He could not imagine spiritual substance because he did not believe it possible for it to be susceptible to pleasures. He could only imagine pleasures dependent on the senses, and therefore he represented God as a sensual being. Although this error is a fundamental one, his morality is nevertheless pure and only concerned with making man happy. Now, no one can tell you the specific means you must use to learn all the happiness that mortal life can give. You must rely on yourself, for no one can judge better than yourself what you need to achieve it. Only prepare yourself for the happiness of examining wisely. For this is a happiness, and a great one. The cheerfulness that you are born with is something so important that you should strive by all means to preserve it in all its strength, for I even believe that your health depends on it. Whoever says that you are always cheerful because you are healthy would be mistaken. Your health must not be considered the cause, but the consequence of your cheerfulness. For cheerfulness is a spiritual gift that has much more influence on the body than the body can exert on it. Your whole well-being depends therefore only on you, Count. You are a free sir, able to attain the greatest happiness, and to keep yourself in a position to enjoy it, and to laugh at all those who would doubt the existence of this happiness. I have the honor, with the deepest devotion and the most heartfelt sentiments, and the most respectful affection, to sign myself Count Dux, September 29th, 1787, as your most humble and obedient servant, Jacques Casanova de Seingalt.